Hi, and welcome to D-Listers of History. We're a podcast and YouTube channel where we talk about people you've never heard of who've changed the world. My name is Vega, and I am one of your co-hosts, and I'm here to do a D-Listers of History sidebar. D-Listers of History sidebar is when we look at some sort of current event and just see either what the historical connotations are or what it reminds me of, things like that. So there's been a lot of big news stories. It was actually kind of difficult to pick one, but the one that I ended up picking was that that former President Donald Trump was indicted.
Come with me. You could come with me. Oh, you're such a sweet little misfit. When your smile falls down, I wanna lift it. Wanna make you better. Wanna run away together.
This is a landmark case, as you know, the first criminal trial against a former president or presumptive nominee to be the next one. Mr. Trump is facing 34 counts of falsifying business records stemming from an alleged hush money scheme.
It was a week that saw Donald Trump become the first former American president to be convicted of a felony.
This is particularly notable because this is the first time a U.S. president has been indicted in a criminal court. Now, that's not to say that no presidents have broken the law, just that they haven't been indicted. Obviously, lots of presidents broken the law, right? We know that, right? We're on the same page. So I went into it and I looked and said, has a president gotten in trouble with the law in the past? And obviously the obvious thought was Richard Nixon, but that's boring. So I was like, I want to see if anybody else got in trouble. And I found one other, and that was everybody's favorite president, Ulysses S. Grant. So I say everybody's favorite because Ulysses S. Grant is not remembered fondly, although he's had a little bit of a bump up in the rankings of presidents in the past 10 years or so. He tends to be near the bottom of effective presidents. He was an excellent general and just not a very effective politician. In fact, when he left office, he said that no one was happier to see him leave the White House. So he knew there was a problem there. Honestly, at this point, the thing that anybody really remembers him for, this was actually the first fact I learned about President Ulysses S. Grant, was that he was supposedly struggled with alcoholism.
Now elects Ulysses Simpson Grant, who would scream and rave and rant while drinking whiskey, oh the risky, cause he'd spill it on his pants.
And I'll be honest, I don't know how much of that is accurate and how much of that is his political enemies making a big fuss about things. But no matter how you sliced it, Grant, not a fantastic president, but apparently a fantastic horseman. He loved racing horses. He had a need for speed, I guess. And how we know about this is because of a gentleman named William West. William West was a police officer in Washington, D.C. in the late 19th and early 20th century. He was a formerly enslaved person. And he went to the Sunday Star, a newspaper, in 1908, claiming that he had actually arrested President Ulysses S. Grant for speeding. And his story was that Grant was known to race his buggies and horses and stuff on 13th Street. And people were complaining about it because it was unsafe. And somebody else was speeding down that street and hurt someone, not the president. So the police started really cracking down on this behavior. And this police officer, West, he caught President Grant going above the speed limit, as it were. And the way West tells it, he gave the president a warning the first time. And the president said, okay, I totally get it. Yeah, absolutely. You did the right thing. Thank you for being a public servant or whatever. And then proceeded to do the exact same thing again. And William West was again the police officer who caught Grant speeding again on 13th Street. So the way West tells it, he arrested Grant at that point, and Grant paid $20 collateral so that he could, not be put in the jail. And apparently there were 6 other people with Grant who also were levied with this fine. Here's the problem with West's account, and this is a problem we run into a lot in history, is that article from 1908 is the only evidence we have of this ever happening. And I forgot to say at the beginning, this happened, this supposed racing down 13th Street happened in 1872. So this is, more than 30 years later. So that's always the question, right? Like, there's no other evidence of it. That said, I think there's a lot of value in oral histories. We just have to honor and understand that we can't read them the same way that we read archival evidence. So to me, I look at this and I'm inclined to believe William West, but it maybe didn't happen exactly like he said in this story. So maybe he caught the president and that was it. I mean, the way West tells it, they were actually lifelong friends after that. So I can't imagine making that up. That seems like it would be not the sort of thing you would say if it wasn't true to a newspaper. But maybe he didn't actually arrest him, or maybe he arrested him and it was an election year. So maybe the police were like, we don't want any trouble. We don't want to deal with the president being arrested. We're just going to not write this down. I mean, these are not wild things to have happen. That said, it is pretty surprising that something like this could happen and it not get reported anywhere. So you can decide for yourself what you think is going on there. What I think is interesting about this, given our current situation, is that it's just an example of a president being maybe not his best self, but there's a big difference in the handling of it, in the story of this. Ulysses S. Grant is basically like, yeah, man, I was speeding. You do what you got to do. I was breaking the rules. And I think it's fair to say that former President Trump has not behaved that way through this entire process. So that is a big difference. And the fact that if this happened and it didn't become big news is also a pretty big difference. That said, like I said at the beginning, presidents are always breaking the rules. They're always breaking laws. Because you know what? People are always breaking laws. Think for a second. How many times have you broken the law? I don't believe you if you say never. I'm talking about things like underage drinking. I mean things like maybe consuming adult substances when they were not legal in your state. I mean, I don't know, driving after curfew if you were in a state as a teenager that had a curfew. There's people break the rules. The question is, who gets caught? And more often than not, presidents don't get caught. And we are living in an era with much greater scrutiny on our public figures, which I think is a good thing. So I think it is harder and harder to get away with things like this. But what do you think? Do you think that President Grant should have gotten a little more than a slap on the wrist? Do you think if we really dug, we'd find more stories like this? Think it's worth finding those stories? Let me know what you think in the comments. Or if you're on the podcast, go pop over to Instagram and we can have a chat over there or on our Substack. But either way, thanks for hanging out with me. It's been a bonkers time for me because we are in concert season. I'm also a music teacher and the beginning of tour season and everything is chaos. But I am so happy to be here with y'all. If you enjoyed yourself, please subscribe, leave a review, whatever is appropriate to the platform you're engaging with us in. Head over to our Instagram, follow us there. Head over to Substack if you are a giant nerd like me. And there will be, hopefully on Monday, a follow-up piece about this topic as well. And we can just argue, which is my favorite thing to do. Please argue with me. I love it. I always learn something when I argue with smart people. So have a fantastic week. stay safe, enjoy the beginning of Pride, and yeah, have a great time. Thanks for listening to Delicious of History. And now for an episode relevant audio drop.
He doesn't look defiant to me. He looks defeated. I don't think he even believed what he was saying, but he has no choice because he's incapable of accepting what happened.